Hi, my name is Miriam. I work with the Department of Agriculture and Food based in Albany, and my focus is on water issues for agriculture within the Great Southern region. In order to understand our water issues, we need to understand what's happening with rainfall. This is where I've started to delve into trying to understand what's happening with our rainfall patterns, our seasonal variability, and trends over time in rainfall in the Great Southern.
Miriam, you've studied a lot of data on variability in climate. Just give us a bit of background as to where you started and what you've done.
Okay. Well, when I first came to Albany, probably about end of 2007, it was then reported to me that Plantagenet was having an extremely dry season. And funnily enough, coming out of the desert, Meekatharra and the very dry area of Merredin, relative speaking to this area, I was quite amused that they thought that this high rainfall area was having a struggle in getting the rainfall that they wanted. So I set about to actually understand what that really meant, which meant I started studying long-term rainfall records way back to 1889 were available and considered 30-year time lapses from then right up to today. And it was very interesting to see some of those, some of the trends that I had never actually believed were there before, such as declining rainfall, such as increasing temperatures. And then I drilled in further to actually have a look at what was happening on a monthly basis, what was happening on the sorts of rainfall events we're having. Do we get more small rainfall events? Do we get more big rainfall events? What's actually happening to our rainfall and our weather pattern?
Let's have a look at rainfall for a start.
Well, firstly, it is very clear that we have a declining trend in rainfall across the southwest and across the Great Southern of Western Australia. But what we need to bear in mind is that declining rainfall is not the same for everyone. So we might have a 100 mil decline in rainfall for, say, Franklin, but in fact there's no decline in rainfall for somewhere like Ongerup. So we need to be thinking very carefully about what's happening for me, not what's happening for my neighbour, what's happening for me in terms of rainfall decline, or what's happening for me in terms of temperature increases or changes. So it's not a generic statement that we can say globally it's declining by 15%. We actually have to think about what's happening in our back paddock.
And many of those figures would be very, very different for many people.
Absolutely correct. And in fact, the decline is much greater the further we go to the west of our region as opposed to the east of our region. So, for example, I've indicated there's no change for Ongerup in annual rainfall. And when I say change, I'm actually talking about something which is statistically valid. The definition of climate change actually goes back and says that we need to see evidence of a declining trend in rainfall over a decadal period of time, and it must be statistically valid. So in order to be statistically valid, we've actually got to put some maths to it, which I don't really enjoy, but we'll do that. So if we look at putting stats to it, we can say that we can be sure we can be certain that that change is real. It's not just a figment of my imagination. It's a real change, or there is really nothing happening. So for Ongerup, there is really nothing statistically valid in terms of long-term annual rainfall. But when we go to Franklin or Cranbrook or Tambalup or Broome Hill, we can say, yes, there is a statistically significant decline in rainfall, which is clearly evident from 1975 through to today.
What about distribution in terms of the months of the year?
Okay, in terms of distribution, we can also be very clear that for most areas, there is a statistically significant decline in rainfall for the month of June, and for some, there is a decline for the month of July. However, June is the most significant for much of the southwest and the Great Southern in terms of declining rainfall, and that therefore is contributing to overall decline in winter rainfall. Now, having said that June is the most significant, there are some areas where that is not true. For example, Ongerup again is one that doesn't have a significant decline in June rainfall. However, we can for Franklin, that is very real. For Cranbrook, that is very real. For Tambalup, that is very real. In converse, as we go further to the east of our regions, we're actually seeing an increase, which may or not be statistically significant, of summer rainfall. And in particular, I'm talking about January rainfall. So I think for Ongerup, in fact, and further out than that, it is very clear and statistically significant that there is an increase in summer rainfall. For other areas moving closer to Cranbrook, there is a trend, but it's not statistically significant. So in other words, don't hang your hat on it being a real change at this point in time.